That's a big jar.
That's a big jar. Yeah, I'm almost running out of water there, though. Jan, how are you today?
I am great. How are you today?
I'm well. I'm well. In preparation for this encounter, I got to admit, I was floored by your life story. So I'm very excited to dig into it.
Sure. All right. I'm an
Uh,
open book, so dig
so
in.
let's start. So once again, everyone, I'm Sunny. This is the Sunny Ray Show. Today I've got Jan as a guest. The title is the bootleg DVD that changed everything. So I'm sure people are wondering about that. Tell us a little bit, in terms of maybe the company you're building today or the mission that you're on today. Just maybe give us a sentence or two about that, and then we'll come back to that at the end of the interview. But just thought we'd give people a bit of a teaser in terms of where we're going.
Yeah, sure. We're building essentially, well, I like to call it a unified neural network, but to make it more simplified and understandable for people, we're building a end-to-end data synthesis automation platform that helps product teams ship 120 times faster.
Interesting. Okay, so again, we'll double click on that and what you guys are doing there. But Jan, for me, the story falls a bit flat about companies unless I know a little bit about the founders. So I like to start there. Where do you want to go back? Would love to kind of get your backstory before entrepreneurship, before design, before yeah, all the cool things going on in your life. I was reading that was it true that you were born in Uman, Ukraine?
Yes, I was born in Uman, Ukraine. Back then, it was still Soviet Union.
Interesting. So, what are your earliest memories of that? I was reading about your exodus, and how did that experience of being an immigrant shape the way you see the world today?
I think it makes you open-minded, and it makes you incredibly resilient to shit happening to you.
Yes. Something that's probably quite important in this day and age, right?
Yes,
Uh,
yes,
and I read that you grew up in Israel,
I did.
and it was not, I guess, the easiest upbringing. How did?
Uh,
Yeah.
Look, I come from a poor family, right? Like
Mm.
we were technically the bourgeois back in Soviet Union because of my grandpa. My grandpa was very well connected. He even did some business with uh, Armenian, I think, mob and some Russian mob. Like it's a whole story and for another day, I guess. But we were very well off when we were in Soviet Union. We had a plot of land, we had a big house, and then whatnot. But then running away, if you will, right? And then some people would not call it running away. People would call it maybe I don't know, betraying your own country, if you will. But anyway, running away and then moving to Israel, suddenly you find yourself in an incredibly poor position, right? You're a new immigrant, you don't know the language, you don't know the system, you don't know anything, and the only money that you really have, because back in the day, you were not allowed to smuggle money out of Soviet Union. It was jail time level, and my grandma essentially hid $300 in her slipper to cross borders with it. That was the level of all of the money we had, right? And so arriving in Israel, Israeli government supported and still does support new immigrants with stipends, and the stipend we're getting, I think, it was like 1,200 shekels per month for the family, right? And we're a family of 6 people because we moved, me, my sister, my parents, and my grandparents were 6 people essentially. So we didn't have any money, right? And so the first couple of years it was an adjustment because I don't know anyone. I don't know the language. I don't understand anything. Everything is very new to me. I'm walking around with an open mouth because suddenly you have selections. Moving from Soviet Union, when you had no selections, you walk into a store and you have coffee. That's it. You don't have coffee this, coffee that, coffee that. You just have coffee. I think the great resemblance of the feeling of that is in a great movie with Robert Williams called Moscow on Hudson. It's a really old movie of a Soviet clown from circus defecting in New York in 1980s or something like that. And he's being sent to a store by a family that quote unquote adopted him to pick up some coffee, and he walks into this massive aisle with so many selections, he just faints because there's just too many options, right? So yeah, it wasn't easy, it wasn't simple. Yeah, and then I'm a child of the streets. Like I grew up essentially on the streets because my parents worked hard most of my life to support me and my sister as we were growing up.
I was also reading about your trials in New York. When did you actually move to New York?
So I came to New York for the first time when I was 18 years old, 1998.
Mhm.
I was about to go to the military. My dad, who had a really terrible experience in the Soviet military, was kind of against that. He didn't want me to go to the military, even though they're very different. So he sent me to New York to his sister. His sister lives in New York, my aunt. And I was there for a couple of months. I fell in love with New York, but I also felt a sense of duty to my own country. And so I decided to go back and actually go and serve. But I made a decision back then. I remember when I just arrived back to Israel and my parents picked me up from the airport. On the way home, I told my parents that one day I will live in New York, period. I didn't say how, I didn't say when, I just made that decision. And so while I was in the military, my parents decided to move to Canada. And so they picked up and went to Canada while I stayed behind to finish my military service. And then I joined them in Canada. I was in Canada for 6.5 years. That's where I kind of started my career, if you will. I went to college there, which I dropped out of when I fell in love with web design. And in 2006 ish, I got kicked out of Canada. I didn't do anything bad. I just trusted some really nefarious lawyers during the immigration process. So I had to go back to Israel, but I really wanted to live in North America. I really connected with the culture. And so I said, hey, I always wanted to live in New York. I'm going to go to New York. And so I found myself in 2006 in New York. And then, not going to go into too many details, but living in the streets, homeless, living on $5.50 a day.
Yes, yeah, and I was gonna say I was reading about that as well, and then it was when you watched, was it The Pursuit of Happiness on a
Yes.
bootleg DVD?
Yeah. I like the joke when people ask me about the story. And mind you, the article that you read, this was the first time that I opened up to mass public, if you will, within 19 years of no one knowing about that. Only incredibly close people to me knew that I was homeless, and only one person, which is my wife, knew the details of it. Even my parents didn't know the details of my experience. They knew I was homeless, but no more details than that. So when I meet people now and people ask me about this, and I like to joke say that Will Smith saved my life. I don't know Will Smith. I never met him. If by any miraculous chance he listens or watches your podcast at some point, I would love to meet him. I would love to shake his hand and say thank you. But movies for me was always kind of like a escape from life, if you will. I'm an artistic person, so I love good storytelling, and movies were always for me a place to go and disconnect from reality and kind of relax and get inspired and whatnot. And so I was walking down, I think around Chelsea area one day, and back in the day, I don't think you can find them these days in New York, of course. But back in the day, there used to be a bunch of like bootleg DVDs selling for like $4 or $5, depending on the title, depending on how recent or new it is. And so I found one that was called Pursuit to Happiness, and it was resonating because I am in that situation in that very moment. I am pursuing my happiness. And so I grabbed that DVD. It was very painful to shell out whatever was $5 because it was basically one day of living for me. And I watched it in Starbucks, just sitting in the corner in a little chair and watching it, and kind of tears, rolling down my cheeks of how deeply I could resonate with Will Smith character of going through homelessness. Now, Pursuit to Happiness, for those who don't know, it's based on a true story of a African American guy who went through a lot of hardships, tried many different things, and eventually became homeless with a kid. But now he's one of the wealthiest people who live in New York. He's still alive. He's still around. He became very successful in stock trading and then investment and so forth.
And so, Jan, from that turning point, you started bartering design work on Craigslist. You saved enough to rent a tiny basement studio in Brooklyn and eventually landed your first major client, a top national law firm. So looking back, how did that period of struggle affect or impact your design philosophy and, your understanding of human empathy?
I was asked this similar question on another podcast, and I said that when somebody goes through homelessness, I noticed, right? And again, this is just my view and my opinion, but I've noticed that there are two paths that people typically take after they either get out of it or get a little bit out of it. There is the one path that a lot of people take of hating the world and then being pissed off at the world of, this happens to me and people don't like me or don't love me, whatever. And there's another path where you understand the pains and the struggles and of people being homeless, and so you develop this innate empathy for human beings in general, right? And so, in terms of my design and philosophy, if you will, I always design like it's my own project, regardless what I was working on. If I was working at agencies with clients, then I think somewhere in my LinkedIn, there are a few clients that left feedback that I treat every project. Oh, hello, child. I treat
I forgot to tell you about my co-host, but yeah, carry on.
I treat every project as my own project. I always did. I live with a notion that no matter what job you do, even if you're sweeping the streets, you have to do the best you can possibly do it. Otherwise, just don't do it at all, period. And I know some people have no choices, but even if you don't have the choices, and believe me, I was in those situations a lot, having no choices. And the only job I had, I was thankful for having it, and I would always do the best I can do. Now, in terms of my experience as homelessness, I always look fondly on it backwards. I think it's probably one of the best things that could have happened to me to shape me to who I am today.
So you've built an incredibly successful career over the last 20 years as a design leader, working across many continents. At what point did you start feeling that design leadership alone wasn't enough and that there was a bigger problem to solve?
Late 23. So from 2014 until December of 23, I essentially built other companies, not as a founder, if you will. 5 startups that I was a part of. 3 of them went through an acquisition. And I know that partially the impact was based on the work that I've done in the companies. One company I know for a fact that the acquiring company CEO basically said that because of the redesign of the platform, we decided to acquire the company. And I was the sole designer at the time. So it's like, well, I guess I'm the responsible here. I've spent a decade building products, building successful teams, building processes in the companies. And when I left my position as the head of design at Augment AI, which was an AI company out of Seattle, in late 23, the CEO asked me to remain as an advisor, so I remained until end of 24. But I was sitting on the couch with my wife, I think it was January or so of 24, and I'm looking around, I'm like, I want to decide what I want to do next. Back in 21, I wanted to take a year and write a book. Then I thought maybe I should do that, right? The book I wanted to write was essentially about the framework that I developed in 2019 when I was head of design for a cybersecurity company, which proven to be successful. I have trained and educated a bunch of design and product leaders on how to use and deploy it in their organizations. One of those, I believe, Colgate, that used the framework some years ago. And I wanted to write a book about it. But when I was trying to think about the book and reading the first chapter that I wrote back in 21, I realized that I can actually turn it into a product and just give it as a product to people instead of having them read books.
Gotcha. You've also spoken about a frustrating experience in a fast paced startup where you saw, siloed data and
Mhm.
anecdotal decision making, right? So can you talk about that specific moment? Like what did you witness that made you say, something is broken here and I need to fix it?
Oh, I that was a very specific moment in time that is engraved in my brain. Uh, I was in a quarterly roadmap planning. Uh, I was a cybersecurity company back then. We were in a quarterly roadmap planning for our product. And it was, so imagine yourself a conference room where you have the CEO, the CFO, the CTO, the VP of engineering, me, head of design, head of product, chief revenue officer, VP of sales. I think we had another few people that I can't remember right now the titles. And we spent 2.5 hours in that meeting essentially arguing. It wasn't necessarily a strategic planning moment. It was basically a war, a tug of war, where chief revenue officer saying that if we're not going to build these features, my team cannot sell. Customer experience or customer support director saying, well, if we're not going to fix these or change these things, then these clients are going to walk away. I remember the VP of engineering and CTO essentially arguing about the fact that we don't have the capacity to build these things. We need more money, or we need more people, or headcounts, or whatnot. And it just went on and on and on for 2 hours basically, until the CEO basically had to put the foot down and say, okay, we're going to build this, we're going to go here, we're going to do that, right? What I realized back then is, in those 2 hours of this argument, not a single time anyone mentioned what exactly our customers needed and our users wanted. Everything was about sales. Everything was about not losing customers. Everything was about increasing our sales motions and revenue, and all these type of things. But none of them said, "Hold on a second. What are our customers need in order for us to increase this, revenue that we want to get to, right?" And that was the moment where I was so frustrated. I was on the border to basically just walk out and said, "Screw it, I'm done. I'm gonna resign. I can't do this anymore." But that was the moment where essentially triggered me to try and figure out, how can we do this better? There has to be another way. We can't just go here every single quarter and just argue with each other, and decisions are being made in fear mongering situations where CEO is afraid to lose revenue or whatnot, or lose sales. It cannot be done in the moment where somebody wants a feature just because they want a feature and they think that's going to be great, while we know it's probably not going to be great, right? Because product and design team are the ones typically who do all the research directly with customers and users and know and understand what their unique needs requirements are, right? And so that's when I created the decision making framework that essentially allowed us as a company to make better decisions, less time in those meetings. We stopped arguing, we actually started making decisions, right? So that was a very specific kind of moment in time that triggered that. And from there on, I couldn't stop thinking about that.
Hey, Jan, in terms of, so you guys recently rebranded
Yes.
Insight, right? AI, it's to Sapien now. Is that
Mhm.
how you pronounce it?
Yep.
So you guys are working on powerful autonomous agents called Aether at the core. Is that the title of it, or?
We were.
Hmm.
We kind of recently deprecated the name Ether.
Hmm.
We found in research that having too many names, conventions within the platform confuses people, and so we decided to boil it down to just one name, which is Sapien AI.
Got it.
And then our agentic workforce is basically broken down into functionalities, right? So we call it, we have a PM agent, we have a design agent, we have a technical agent, right, or an engineer, right? So we don't give them necessarily names, we just give them functional identification.
Interesting. Interesting. And so the tagline, "What if your data could think, reason, and act?" That's a bold promise. So how do you guys deliver on that?
Not a promise, it's exactly what it does. Not a promise. I just dropped a beta test of one of our mini agents, if you will, to a founder and investor group that I'm a part of on WhatsApp, literally 5 minutes before getting on this call. So our system is essentially a careful orchestration of different AI brains that pass things along to each other. And then we have our own LLM that makes autonomous decisions within the platform. The way it works really is our product is data unification system. Like you can integrate with upwards of 300 different applications into our product. We will you don't have to structure or organize your data and have to do anything with it. We will organize it, we will structure it, we will clean it, we'll ingest everything. We even go farther than just cleaning it, and we understand things like our AI completely disregards PIIs. Our AI completely understands and disregards things like spam or scam within ticketing systems like Intercom, Zendesk, and so forth. And then when it ingests everything and cleans everything, then it passes along to another brain that essentially runs an in-depth NLP intelligence to derive user issues and tag it accordingly with behavioral, emotional, and technical tagging structures. So essentially, on the other side of that, it structures a list of tagged user issues: pain point, distrust, annoyance, dissatisfaction, happiness, request, error, bug, whatever the case might be. There's hundreds of them. And then from there, it passes along to another brain that takes all that in and essentially runs and generates insights and recommendations on what needs to be done. So as an example, one of our former customers, when we launched our MVP under the name Insight, it was an e-com company out of New York, and our system were able to discover a very specific garment that one of the problems it was having, or issues or pain points, if you will, was it was wrinkling really quickly and easily. On the other side, typically in a lot of different products that you might use for that to try and find user insight, you'll get summaries of what is happening with your user, right? And it will say something along the lines in other products like, there's an issue with blah, 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 your product, your garment, and maybe you should solve it, and then it will solve the problem of your customer. Our system goes beyond that. It even blew my mind because we never accounted for physical products. We accounted for software, digital products. But in the physical world, our AI brains essentially went out to the world and found 5 different materials that the company can use in order to manufacture the garment, with shorts, I think, with any one of these options that still comply with their environmental goals, with their requirements, with their needs, with the price points and whatnot, to make different choices for the garment not to be as wrinkly, and by that solving their customers' pain point, right? So that's what our system does. It provides you to why you have these issues with your customers experiencing X, Y, and Z issues, and what to do about it. Now, beyond that, we have a sophisticated analytics system inside of it that essentially shows you on each insight and recommendation what will be your goal impact score, what will be your business goal score, what will be your usability goal impact score. And if you have environmental goals, then it will also score that too, to show you here's why, here's what you need to do, and here's the impact you're going to have on your business goals, product goals, usability goals, and environmental goals.
Interesting. Cool. Jan, I mean, if you're available, I'd love to have you on maybe for like a part 2 or something next week. Sure. But I only got through like a fraction of my questions, and but yeah, you're I love your story. Is very inspirational, and yeah, thank you, everyone for checking in. Really appreciate it, and thank you, Jan, for your time.
Thank you for having.
Cheers.
Cheers.